Oh boy. Well, I guess just friends. A lot of my friends played, and I found it really interesting. Thought it was cool. And funny story. I played guitar. Started when I was about 13, maybe,
Hmm.
and I was in these really bad. I was in this one really bad rock band, and I couldn't really play. And I remember one day I was at dinner with my mom, and the other guitar player called and said, "Chris has the pink slip. Tell him he's got the pink slip." So they fired me because I was so bad. And that kind of forced me to start taking lessons. And I was like, I'll show them. And I got the bug. And I just started getting really into theory and lessons and practicing and just obsessed with guitar. And that I started taking it serious around 17.
Hmm.
So, 17, started getting into it with the early influences. I'd say like Yngwie and Al Di Meola,
Hmm.
like most guitar players. And then, I went to PBCC where we met and started studying, guitar and jazz there, and then went to UNF and got a bachelor's degree in jazz studies from UNF. Then came back to West Palm, played in top 40 bands for a couple years, then moved to Nashville, and here since 2011. So, yeah.
Cool. And who was the responsible to giving you the Ingve music, Ingve Malmsteen?
That's another funny story. So, when I had a girlfriend in high school, and this was like the beginning of the bug, actually, this whole night. So, I was with a girlfriend at the time, and we were like 17 years old,
Hmm.
and we couldn't get into the bar where her friends. It was in Lauderdale, and her friend's boyfriend was playing, and we went down there. We took this trip, and I remember I was like passed out in the back of the van riding back from Lauderdale because we couldn't get in the show, so we just waited around all night. And I was falling asleep, and all of a sudden they started playing Yngwie. I think it was Black Star, and I perked up, and I was like, "What is this?" And they played Far Beyond the Sun, and I was like addicted. I was like, I've never heard anything like this, and I got really into like practicing and doing the whole shred thing, which I can't stand anymore. But at that point, I loved it. That was like the beginning of what I did. But yeah, that was like the beginning. And then, from getting into the Yngwie thing,
who
then I
was
found out
who was
Viola.
who was that guy? It was Brian Auer.
Oh man, Brian Hour. I met him a few years later. Um,
I used to,
he's we still talk. Geez, every other week. I love him.
yeah,
He
I,
rips.
I used to play
He
with
plays he
him.
plays way better than me, and he's killing it. He's out in Oregon, and he's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hit it off because we were both into. I don't know. I met him, and we were talking about guitars, and then we started hanging out and jamming. But yeah, the whole beginning of it was the shred thing.
Yeah, it's true. The first time I saw you was on a guitar contest on Guitar Center on.
Oh my God, that was a disaster.
Yeah, I
That
and
was
Brian was on that and that contest too. I remember it was on West Palm Beach a long time ago. I think it was in
yeah,
2003 probably. Yeah,
that was a long time ago.
yeah.
That was too many chops and not enough idea about how music works. So that was pretty silly because he still has that video and we watched it and it's painful. It is so painful to watch.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. How was your experience going into the PVCC, the West Palm Beach Community College?
Man, that was really cool. You know, I learned a lot from the teacher, Charles Carey, at the time. And yeah, I mean, that was like, you know, intro into the jazz stuff and
Hmm.
that type of thing. And uh, yeah, it was good. It was good to get that under my belt and
Cool.
then go to UNF and study there.
Awesome. So and then how do you get the audition for Nashville? How was that audition?
Well, that's a story. So I was playing in a bunch of bands in. Well, actually, I guess the genesis of the country thing started because I was teaching guitar lessons in at a shop in Stuart, Florida,
Mhm.
and one of my students wanted to learn a Brad Paisley solo,
Yeah.
and I had never heard Brad Paisley. I was always intrigued by the country thing, but never sat down and learned it. And I heard that, and I was like, "Oh wow!" And that really inspired me to learn that. And I started picking around that style, then started playing in some local country bands,
Mm.
trying to get that under my fingers. And then one day we were playing a show, well, a gig, just a bar gig, and an artist, a Nashville artist, came through town, and we all jammed. They got up on stage. They were on a radio tour, and I was talking with the guitar player, and I said, "Man, I want to do what you're doing. You know, you're touring, you're doing the Nashville thing. Like that's my dream." And he's like, "You need to solve the geographical problem, and you need to move out of here."
Mm.
And I was really scared, and I'm super insecure about, you know, my playing and whatnot. So the guy who was hosting the gig, it was a weekly gig, and he was always asking me, "When are you going to move to Nashville? When are you going to move to Nashville?" I was like, I'm not moving. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to do it." So he called me up the day after the that one bar gig, and he's like, "When are you going to move to Nashville?" I said, "I told you I'm not."
Mm.
He's like, "Well, what if I can get you an audition?" So I was freaking out. And I guess the tour manager and the artists, they liked how I played. So they wanted to audition me. And I went out, I drove to Tampa the next day. They sent me like 5 tunes. I learned them. Went to Tampa, auditioned. I was so nervous because this is like, these are Nashville guys. They're
Yeah.
my, in a sense, I didn't know who they were, but they were my heroes in the sense of like, that's what I wanted to strive for, to be a Nashville player or whatever that is. So I went and I auditioned, and you know, I didn't say a word. I didn't, you know, because I was so nervous. And you know, I left and I hung out with the band for a little bit, but I was like quiet because I was so scared. So I called the tour manager like a week later. Said, "Hey man, you know, you know what happened with that?" And he's like, "Well, we didn't really get a sense of your personality, so you know, since you live so far away, we didn't know how you were going to mesh. If you lived in Nashville, we would have threw you on a couple dates to see how you did.
Mm.
But my biggest advice to you is move to Nashville and get some Nashville stage time." So that was kind of the green light. If I was ever going to do it, I was like, I got to do it now.
Yeah.
Which, you know, brings me to the next thing of like, if you want to get a gig, just be cool.
Yeah.
That's, you know, when people say the hang is important, like that's pretty much everything. Like, you know, when I went and hung out with them and I was like this quiet, weird dude, there's no hang, you know, so they didn't know how to read me. So, but if I was like this uplifting, cool, positive dude, maybe it would have been a different story. But I've learned through my time in Nashville that 90% of getting a gig is your hang and
Yeah.
just being cool and being able to hang with on the bus and just not being a squeaky wheel. So I moved up to Nashville, not knowing anyone. I had like, you know, maybe like one buddy up here.
Mm.
And I threw all my stuff in a hatchback. I had like 3, 4 guitars, an amp, and some clothes. I drove up to Nashville, and I had this apartment lined up, and it fell through as I was driving up. So I stayed on my friend Lee's floor
Oh.
for like 3, 4 days in his basement till I found another room in some other dude's basement that had opened up through a friend in Florida, knew somebody up here. And I stayed in this basement for about a year, super cheap rent, and that was good. And then I just practiced my ass off and tried to just take every gig I could get and go out and network and meet people and sit in with whoever I could. And, you know, the typical what everyone does. So that was that. But I came up here with just a prayer.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I had no plan. It was just, you know.
Yeah, in the beginning, always it's hard to start something, but the thing is that you have to keep, you know, doing it, you know, and connecting with many people till you get some gigs, and then you start playing with different artists, and then it's like word of mouth. I think, you know, it's like.
Well, and that's it. And especially in Nashville, there's no, like, nobody has an agent or anything like that. It's all the good old boy thing. Like, it's like kind of the saying is, the better your friends do, the better you do. So everyone's throwing gigs around because you help out a friend and they help you. And it's just a cycle. So, I mean, all the gigs I've ever gotten are through just friends. They're like, oh, call Chris. That's it. So the first, I guess, famous artist was a female group, a trio called Daisy. And I got them like a year after moving to town. And that kind of, like, I think from that point, like, I got that gig and I did like some reunion show with them. And then I just started getting artist gigs. Because when I moved to town, I went right to Broadway in Nashville. And I started doing the club gigs and just learning and meeting people. And then that was like my first real, like, gig.
Okay.
And then after that, I played with a female artist, Morgan Frazier, and then Drake White, and then Logan Mize. And I mean, like, a ton of artists in between, you know, just sub out gigs. And I mean, literally probably hundreds at this point. Yeah, I've been with him, I think we're going on 4 years now. But I produced an artist, Derek Jones, and I played guitar on the record and produced it. And Derek was best buds with Billy's brother, and Billy's brother threw him the CD. And Billy really liked the album and the guitar work, so he said, hey, who did this? And he wanted to meet me. So I went to his house and we jammed. And we hit it off. And then he said, hey, I want you to, you know, lead my band and, you know, put together the show and get the players and let's go tour.
Right.
It was a very, like, not Nashville way to get a gig, but it was pretty cool that I got called. I got called because he liked what I did on a record, which is, you know, very flattering. I think that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been awesome. Billy's been amazing.
Very good. And you know, we have a lot of for Argentinian guitar players, you know, that many people here, they want to know about, you know, country guitar style techniques, you know. And I want to know what kind of guitar methods do you recommend, or techniques to get better on?
Man, I would say, well, country guitar is kind of funny right now, because when I moved to Nashville, it was like all about chicken picking, more or less, and I really tried to wrap my head around that style. But now Nashville is more, I'd say, more pop rock CCM style guitar playing, more ambient, more effect pedal driven, and less, you know, less of the twang. But as far as the twangy stuff is concerned, you know, getting the hybrid picking down,
Okay.
whereas pick and the fingers.
Mhm.
And I mean, just a basic way to start: pick down, pull up, pick down, pull up, and you alternate: pick middle, pick ring, pick middle, pick ring, and just start playing your scales like that. But the biggest thing with that technique is the attack,
Okay.
because a lot of like fusion players will play with hybrid, but it doesn't sound like chicken picking. So what it is it's a hard attack on the, so, so you got,
Right.
so it's a hard attack that's going to give you that percussiveness.
Mhm.
It's almost like playing funk guitar.
Okay.
Like if you have and there's muting happening, you're not going.
Yeah. Exactly.
You got to have it. Right? So there's a lot of like the, like percussive muting. You probably can't hear it over. But just a generic thing, but it's a lot of like that funky type of percussiveness, which is going to give you the chicken picking sound.
Great. Awesome.
So I would say working on that and having a lot of attack and ultimately just learning, Brent Mason solos, Brent Mason things. And so that, I mean, really studying the players, like anything, any style, if you want to learn it, the best teacher is the record. Generally speaking, mostly Fender derivatives, single coils. So I guess like my go-to would either be like a Tele or a Jazzmaster. Those are like my two favorites. But on a session, I'll bring a hollow body of sorts, either a P90s or humbuckers, a Strat, a Tele, a Les Paul, a baritone, maybe a 12-string. But, just to cover all the bases.
So, Chris, it has been a tremendous honor and talk to you for many, many years that I didn't see you,
Yeah, thank you so much for reaching out. It was great to see you pop up in my inbox and reconnect.
All right, Chris, nice to talk to you.
Hey, man, thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Okay. See you, man. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take my horse to the old town road. I'm gonna ride.